Hello. Today I'm going to explain and demonstrate a very weird device, the Torso T1. Torso T1 is a weird fish. Instead of us telling it only what notes to play and where by pushing the buttons like you would do on traditional sequencers, on this one you turn dials and control abstractly named functions, and in so doing you are creating chord progressions, drum patterns and sequence data in a way that potentially can be done much more quickly than by tapping things in, and which can be done in front of an audience and improvised. The whole idea is it is built for speed. You should be able to get something happening very quickly with a T1. Where otherwise you would have to laboriously program these things, you can just turn a dial and make loads of things happen. There is also randomness that we can apply to lots of different functions on the sequencer so that it can generate and improvise on a theme that we determine. And what I'm going to do in this section is I'm going to try and make some music on the T1 from scratch, and I want to explain what I'm doing every single step. And I'll try and use most, if not all, of the functions of the T1. And I hope that this will show you the ways that these slightly abstracted concepts on the knobs can be applied together. So in terms of the available space on the Torso, you've got 16 of these kind of sequencer slots. And each one of these can be up to a 64-step sequence that has 9 notes per step. Odd number that, 9, but it is up to 9-note polyphony on all 16 tracks. Now, all of these 16 tracks added up constitute one pattern, and I've got space for 16 patterns that I can just have ready to go under my fingers. And in this pattern screen, I can copy patterns, so I can copy one to the other, or I could do things like chain them. If I hold one, then the next, then this one, then that one, it will create a chain which will play these 4 patterns in the order that I push them, which is really cool. Or you push that and it will just loop this pattern. And so those 16 patterns, they make up a bank. And it's this bank that I'm in currently. And as you can possibly see, we have 16 banks that are stored in the T1 at any one time. You can use a piece of software that the Torso T1 comes with to back up banks if you wish. Now on the back of this thing is quite a lot of connectivity. You have analog gates A and B and 4 CV outs A, B, C, D. And we can configure which of the pattern buttons these come from with the software. You've interestingly got a CV mod in. That's a CV input so that we can modify some of the functions on the device with control voltages. Very cool. Analog clock in, analog reset in, analog clock out, analog reset out. And then we have MIDI in, out and through with little all mini jacks, and obviously you can use MIDI breakouts to get 5-pinned in MIDI if you wish. Important thing here, USB, that is how it's being powered, but it's actually also able to send data via USB. And this means that I can both power this and it's sending MIDI data to my computer. And at the same time, it could send MIDI data through the MIDI ports and control voltages and gates. It can sequence a lot. Okay, let's hit play. John Cage would approve. Now, there isn't like a rule about what type of sequence goes in what slot on the machine. And so it's up to us to choose what type of instrument we put in each of these slots and create a kind of mental map of where everything is. I personally find, I notice other people doing the same thing with the T1, that I tend to put drums in the bottom left here, and I tend to put melodic things in the top row. So that's what we'll do. You can do what you want here. And the other thing that I really recommend if you perform with this live is you can get really thin strips of tape, which are very useful. You can put them below and above to label what you've got things set up on. Now, the very first thing that I recommend we do is that we pick a scale. We're going to do that because we're going to be changing pitches just by turning a dial, which is very willy-nilly and will cause all kinds of melodic mayhem if we don't constrain what it does. So we'll pick one, and in so doing, we will not hear any wrong notes. Not that the notes can be wrong, but you know what I mean. Now, to edit a channel, we push it, and it goes yellow, and that means that you have it selected. Now you can multi-select channels like this, and any change we make to them will get applied to all of those channels. This is supremely useful. It means that we can set up all our channels to be on one scale at once. So let's select all the top row, and let's turn the scale knob. And now it might be hard to see, but on the bottom of this unit are chromatic, major, minor, penta, hura, iwato, tetra, and user. These are scales built in, and if I'm turning this dial, then very temporarily it will flip the function of the buttons to show me what scale I've got. Pentatonic just then. If you push a knob, it is a button, and it will stay highlighted for as long as the time that you push it. When you let go, it deselects. Very useful for peaking at a function. But since we have a free finger, we can also pick the thing you want. So you've got two different ways of entering notes. Just turn and it'll change the value and get out of the way, or push it down and reflect. What scale do I really want? I'll pick that one. Oh no, that one. And then you back out. One final little UI thing is if you double tap a function, it will lock in place. So it will stay there, which is very useful for things like entering pulses, where you want that to stay where it is. Now, underneath the little white writings are grey writings, and the grey writings are a secondary function for some of these channels. You access them with this control button. If I am looking at scale and I push control, it will show me the root note. Here it's showing a representation of the keyboard. These are black notes, these are white notes, and I can push this to adjust the root note. Or I can double tap to lock it open and then hold control. One thing here is we're locked in this sort of mode now because we double tapped the button. And if you're like, I'm sort of stuck, I'm looking at something, but I can't remember which of the menus it is, well, you can always push bank and it will bring you back out to the high level, top level. So bank is a kind of exit. So we multi-selected these channels, we picked a scale, and we set the root note by holding control, because we could see that root is in grey. Now the final thing that we'd need to do in order to just be able to go hog wild and start making music is we have to tell it what channels things get sent on. And you do that with channel here. If I pick one channel and push this, peek at it, the buttons all go green, with one button being white. Now, these are the MIDI channels. They correspond to the 16 available channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You probably know how to count. At the bottom row, 9 to 16 here. So top row, 1 to 8, bottom row, 9 to 16. So doing, if I deselect this and push that, that's now sending on MIDI channel 15, which incidentally is what I have one of my CV outputs set to. If you're wondering, how do I choose which of these outs is the CV out? You do that in the software, and you tell the software that MIDI channel 15 or 16 or whichever you prefer, those ones, if you map to, data sent to these channels will come out of the CV outs. Now to set up the bottom row to all correspond to the same MIDI channel, and I actually want it to be MIDI channel 10, probably the simplest way is to come in here, pick the bottom left one, and if I do this, I can see that it's set to channel 9. Well, I want it to be set to channel 10. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it to the other slots. And I do this by holding control, and on this little button in grey, hard to see, but it says copy. If I hold that, and then I push a button, it goes green to say that you've copied it, and I can paste it just like that to all these other slots. When I peek at them, I can see that they're all set to channel 10. One non-obvious thing that's actually really cool about this MIDI channel sending thing is, for example, if I come up here, this is set to channel 1. I can deselect this, but I can multi-select channels. It means that the MIDI data on this channel can be sent to channels 1, 3, and 6 at the same time, which is really bonkers if you think about it, because it means that it's going to send to 3 different devices and layer a sound. And you could randomize the channel that it goes on as well for weird round-robin things. We won't do that today, but just know that there are weird emergent generative things that could be done in something so boring as the knob that you choose what MIDI channel it's sent on. And so the bottom row is all assigned to the same MIDI channel. We did it by setting up one and then copying to the others. These top rows, I've got a Juno on channel 1, I've got an MS-20 on channel 2, and I've got an SQ-80, all plugins I'm afraid, on channel 3. Don't be afraid, plugins are great. So this, and this are channels 1, 2, and 3, all very easy. You may wish to copy this pattern at this point and make it a kind of template. You could copy it to all of the other available pattern slots so that they were all set up with the instruments that you knew you wanted to use in the various places that you knew you wanted to have them. Of course, you can also do the thing of building up a pattern and then copying the pattern plus its data to a new slot and iterate from there. So with all that interesting setup out of the way, we are ready to make music. Now, with the T1, we first tell it where we want notes to be, and then we tell it what the notes are. These are 2 separate processes in the T1. It's a bit like a modular synth. And the way we do this is we hit play, and with a channel selected, remember we push it and make it yellow, we turn the pulses dial. Notice it disappears. I'll double tap it. This works just like a tap. We turn a tap, you get more water. You turn the tap the other way, you get less water. And notice that it's putting the pulses in specific places. And I was doing this with a thing called Euclidean geometry. It's using a Euclidean algorithm to choose where the notes are. In fact, it's trying to best spread them out depending on the amount of available steps. Currently, we have 16 steps. But if we reduce the amount of steps, the location of those notes changes as well. So the step length and the pulses are kind of related. I turn pulses to get notes, and I adjust the step length to choose how long the phrase is. And in so doing, it will also determine the placement of the notes. Pretty weird, isn't it? You just turn a dial and you get notes. You don't tell it where the notes are going to be. Well, you can do that. If you hold down pulses like this, I can manually turn notes off and put them where I want. Very cool. So if I put some in here and then turn this down, I've turned down all of the Euclidean pulses, but it always keeps the ones that I chose where to put. By the way, I didn't show you this, that if you lock in the pulses menu, you can hold Control and select a pulse, and with that pulse selected, I can change it just for that one note. And so in this way, I can pick specific notes and program specific melodic patterns. And in fact, it does change the color to show you that these ones were programmed by hand. Now with step length here, by the way, if we hold Control, we can go beyond 16 steps. I'll reduce it back down to 16. This is all a bit monotonous, isn't it? Let's change the pitch. So by turning the pitch dial, it shifts one little note. But if I hold this down, it's showing us lit up here the keys that are available in the scale that we chose, which was pentatonic, D. And if I hold this down and push multiple steps, it will play a chord in this mode. And here are these little pink buttons, and they represent octave up and down. Nice. Ooh. Let's go to the kick drum here and turn this. Oh, we don't hear a kick drum, and that's because we need to adjust the pitch that the drums are on. Because I'm using Ableton Live and I have a drum rack going on in the moment, and this low C, that's where the kick drum triggers. So of course, I need for this not to be constrained to the scale, otherwise I can't select all of the notes. Layering, drums there. But that's fine. Now I've chosen the pitch, I can just merrily turn up pulses and get a 4/4 beat. I can hold pulses and get sued by New Order. Okay, so on this channel, I just picked a different pitch, which corresponds to the hi-hat. And it's put them here. However, I don't really want them there. I want to shift them. Underneath pulses is rotate. If I hold Control, I'll double tap this. You can see that we can shift or offset where the pulses are located. So we entered notes two different ways. We offset them. Now, repeats and time. Repeats are literally that. They're a ratchet, you might call it. But for every hit, it plays another hit. An offset is a different velocity or loudness for each of those subsequent hits. You can make them fall or go up. If I want to spend some time on that offset screen, I can double tap Control. And then by pushing this, it will show me the offset menu. And this has got this kind of T interface. And what the sort of T interface is doing is it's showing us that we're in the midpoint of the settings. They are bi-directional. And we can shift a value to the right or to the left. And by turning the dial, we go all the way past through all of the blue, and then we move into a yellow section. We keep going, we move further into the yellow and further until we come to the end. And we can hear with offset what it's doing is it's making every subsequent repeat a bit quieter. And if we go the other direction, it will make every subsequent one a bit louder. So you get those nice kind of, nice feel to it. And we can always go clear and repeats. Clear, repeats will reset what we were doing with the repeats and the offset. And since we're discussing feel, now time is a control that works in conjunction with repeats. Oof. And in short, we get different time bases that we can explore for our repeats. Different feels for those repeats. Really nice. And then the additional control under time, called pace, is the speeding up and slowing down of each repeat. So in short, what we're doing is we're making it sound like the repeats are speeding up or slowing down, and we can change their velocity as well. Mute. Now I'm adjusting sustain. Sustain is simply the length of the notes. You may be able to see that they are getting longer or shorter. Simple enough. But it's something that you can control. The other one is division. Which overall slows down the speed of the track depending on clock dividers. Another really important one is probability. If I have a channel selected and I hold Control and turn probability down, it's the probability that notes are going to occur. And it eats away at the notes in an interesting way. Now, timing is another very important one. Timing shifts the timing of every second note and creates shuffle. Time and tested. Always a good time. Whoa, we can go backwards as well as forwards. Really nice that. And now let's mute something. To mute, I hold mute, and I touch the channel I want to be muted, but it will only be muted once I let go. Which is cool. We can queue up mutes. By holding mute, I can toggle these, and it will execute the switcheroo when I let go. So I could prepare a very complicated set of muting and unmutings, and then release it on command. If you hold mute and control, you can sort of roll your finger over these both. It instantly mutes and unmutes. Like that. So we've got a very basic thing going on. Now, let's get a more interesting melodic passage. And there are two controls here that I think need to be investigated. And they are voicing and range, my goodness, because these two sound very similar, but they are different, and they have absolutely flummoxed me for some time trying to understand them. Voicing is a kind of shift where it's going to keep the notes the same, but shift them up and down octaves. It'll obviously have to keep them the same whilst also sticking to the scale that we picked. But in short, know that voicing moves things up and down without adding new and different notes. Now, there's a style for voicing. If I double tap Control and hold it, we get this small green little zone here. This style page is how we kind of animate the voicing. And there are 3 different polyphonic types at the top and 3 different monophonic types at the bottom. This one is fixed polyphonic. This one is ramp monophonic. And if we look at the notes, if we can see that they rise and fall in a ramp Value 3 is climb. Subtle here because we haven't got a crazy amount of notes, but hopefully you get the idea. Poly, fixed, ramp, or climbing. And the bottom ones are mono, fixed, ramp, and climb. And these bottom three have the effect of kind of arpeggiating. And then these top ones here have the effect of retaining the chord that we picked in the pitch here and shifting it up and down, inverting it, but keeping the notes effectively the same, constrained by our scale. So that's voicing. It's a nice way of augmenting and pushing the notes that we have selected around a little bit. I'm now going to clear voicing. And instead, let's play with range. Now, range is more like a sort of pitch shifter. It's going to shift the notes around and find new notes for us. And it's going to use a kind of shape template to do it. If we just turn range, we see this T-shaped interface again, and we hear that things are shifting up and down with a kind of progression. And that progression is chosen by a similar sort of menu to voicing here, where there is a top green row and a bottom green row that have different shapes. So these top rows, I'll show on screen, are 4 different shapes, each which have different qualities. They go start middle, they go up, then right down, then up a bit more, or they start middle, then they go up a bit, then they go up a bit more, and so forth. 4 different shapes. Not too important what they are, except to know that they are different shapes. And then these bottom ones are like simple LFO shapes. Saw, triangle, sine, and pulse, down and up. So it's like applying an LFO to the key note, the position of the keys, but it'll find new notes unlike voicing. Now, this little pink fella is here to let us choose the CV input as the way of modifying the notes. You can use external CV to push the notes around. Really cool. Or we can pick one of these. Now, if we back out, we see the T shape here. By turning the range here, we're choosing how much it applies that shape. And then with these little like pink things here, we're choosing the rate by which it does it. Faster is further up, slower, further down. We'll have to wait a long time till we hear a shift. There it is. Speed that up, shall we? So with range, we can create kind of chord progressions, find new notes by turning up the degree by which it is pushed around. Hold control, we've got our different shapes that the chord progression will get applied with. And then suddenly we end up with quite an interesting and complex progression. Do you remember me mentioning that there were these output channels? For example, I could take channel 5 here, and I could set its output to be this one. And I could That's cool, isn't it? So these two are now like talking to each other. Just the pace. the offset, make it fall in velocity. Hold shift, and then I can do that instantly. Perhaps I'll reduce the steps on this channel here. And I'll change the channel to 2. Now it triggers the MS-20. I'll reduce the velocity, which has the effect of muting the filter because the filter is being velocity controlled in this patch. And then what I want to do is play with random. If I push random here and turn up velocity, oh, that's very nice. It's randomly changing velocity for me. And now the way it does this is that there is a random sort of stepped value in the T1. And I can change what it is by turning this up, and it starts to go warm pink. And that means that it's really random. It's constantly changing at this time until I turn it back down. Now it will repeat the randomness that it was just doing until I turned it down. If that makes sense? So you can look for a different feel to your randomness and then turn it down to keep it the way it is. Fans of modular will recognize that as a music thing, Turing machine style thing. Sweet. Sounds like music to me. And then I'll do some range on this. Oh yeah. And I want that to happen faster, so I'll come here and I'll adjust the pink control on range. Oh, that way. Octave shifts, using voicing. Maybe I'll go down with the range. And I'll change the phrase. This is saw. Oh, that's nice. Ooh. Some final, finessing things that we didn't look at. Accent. Adjusts and puts a kind of velocity pattern on the pattern. You can turn up the amount of it. It's creating those wonderful little extra velocity hits which make our filter open. And there are patterns that you can choose. The top 4 are preset patterns: a go-go, timbales, congas, bongo, and the bottom ones are LFO shapes. Sine, for example, there. So you can apply velocity patterns very easily. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Another one here is length. What length does is a kind of looper where we can reduce the length of a track, create loops from it. Hold length. These top sections here represent whole bars from 1 to 16, and these bottom ones, these half shaded ones, are divisions: half, a quarter, and 1/8 to 16th. We use this to grab section half a bar. And weirdly, if we also hold clear, it will grab half a bar at that moment. You can use this to kind of grab sections and loop them. So you hold clear to grab that moment. Or up here, we grab 2 whole bars. So this is a way of kind of looping and glitching the data that you already have. Underneath length is Quantize. What that's letting you do is, because we can change from one pattern to the next, we might like that to happen at certain times. And if you change the quantization value, this is 1 bar, 2 bar, 3 bar, 4, all the way up to 16, and smaller divisions, we can have it so that patterns shift very quickly, or you have to maybe wait 4 bars until they change. Useful if you're creating a performance with this thing and you want it to only move on to the next pattern after a predetermined amount of time has passed. One final thing. Cycles. And what cycles are a way of baking different settings into bars. So if you have the gift of sight, you could see that we have 4 blue lights lit, and we are moving through 4 different cycles. If I select this SQ80 channel it's playing, and I go to cycles and double tap it, and I push maybe the second bar of cycles, then winky things flash to say, hey, you're doing something in the second bar, my friend. I hope you're ready for that. What I might like to do is change some of the settings. And so what I've just done is I've changed the contents of the second bar. If I push the bank button again, it means that this red affected cycle is different. If I double tap this 4th one, maybe I'll change the range. And I'll have some kind of And if I push bank, we'll pop out of this. And we'll come into this Juno thing here. We'll double press. By the way, if we hold Control, I can choose the amount of cycles. I can have loads of cycles if I like. But let's just do 2. It's a demonstration, not a marathon. And then in this second one, we'll definitely change voicing and range. I want to change the voicing style to monophonic. Cue up some mutes. Ooh. Okay, I got one final thing for you. Temp. Temp uses everything that we've learned in the T1 and lets us apply it in this really amazing, non-destructive way. If you were performing live, you might have patterns that you liked and you didn't want to completely mess with, because things are kind of destructive. If you haven't saved, then you can change what you've got going on. Let me show you what I mean. So we've got a slight variation going on. And if I hold, or indeed double tap temp, we're in temp mode. Let's change all kinds of things. Multi-select all the channels. Oof. Got a lot going on here. We've completely changed it. But I want to return because I've put myself in a corner. All I have to do is hit temp. mess with it. Good, isn't it? So that took a long time to explain, but I hope you'll forgive me for taking my time, because I think the T1 is quite a weird device. It works unlike other sequencers. We can tell it what to do. That is to say that you can work in a kind of Zoxy way, XOX that is, and you can work in a sort of gridsy way, we'd say in modular world. You can just turn knobs and you don't quite need to know what is going on. But I hope by referring to the various sections in here and with lots and lots of trial and error, you'll begin to discover the delightful things that it does actually make possible. It's really quite cool. And I know that there's a number of musicians who are using the T1 Live, such as folks like Surgeon. So he has got some really great talks. In fact, there's one that he also hosted, where he just talks about using it and it's like, I wish someone had made a sequencer like this. And in fact, weirdly, I too have wished for this, a mixture of both Euclidean sewing and manual entry. Well, this does do that. It gives you both. Pretty slick. So if you're still with us, that's the tutorial side. Let's just make music, mate. Come on.